Chinese telecommunications company Huawei announced it will drop the lawsuit against the U.S. government after U.S. authorities returned equipment that was seized without justification 2 years ago. Huawei called the move a tacit admission that the seizure itself was unlawful and arbitrary, and that this case is just one in a series of concerns the company has against unjustified actions taken by the U.S. government against Huawei. How meaningful is this development for Huawei's business? What has caused the U.S. to release this equipment after 2 years? Joining me for the discussion are in the Beijing studio, Qiang, Assistant Director of the International Monetary Institute at Renmin University of China, and from Washington, D.C., Steve Pruitt, Managing Partner at Watts Partners and former Staff Director of the House Congressional Budget Committee. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Now, the U.S. government returned the detained equipment in August that was seized 2 years ago, but didn't offer any explanation for withholding Huawei equipment for so long. Mr. Pruitt, what kind of damage do you think the seizure might have caused the company, or are we talking about fairness instead of economic losses here?
Well, I think we're talking about process more than fairness or any of the other issues that might raise conspiratorial factors here. I think if you look at the essence of what has been reported and why it's been reported as to the seizure, what you come up with, in my opinion, is some of the bureaucrats were looking at some of the paperwork. It didn't match in some ways. I've been involved in transactions where there have been exports flowing back and forth to other countries, and they almost literally, on both sides of those transactions, follow things to the period. So there was, I think, clearly some technical issues at play here. Secondly, I think we have to acknowledge that there has been probably now 3 years of growing distrust between the U.S. and China, and 3 years of concern that is now obviously broken out into the public display about the activities of Huawei in the United States and the capacity and capabilities of their equipment. And I think you don't have to search very far to find instances where, if one wants to try and connect dots and raise questions about national security interests and other items, that it would fuel the current distrust that we're seeing. And then the last point I would make is that once they resolved that the equipment that was indeed involved in this shipment, which again we don't know, or I've not seen anywhere the specifics of this particular equipment, but as it's been outlined, it certainly suggests that if I were looking for a conspiracy, there's enough equipment in that manifest that I would want to ask some more questions and look at things. And the way things have backed up and the way our government is functioning now, and it's undermanned and understaffed and decision makers aren't in place, it doesn't surprise me at all that it took this long.
According to the Huawei statement, however, the U.S. Commerce Department cited unidentified export violation concerns when seizing the equipment while it was in transit. Huawei made multiple requests, but the U.S. government couldn't decide whether an export license was required. Eventually, they decided no license was needed, and that Huawei had complied with export administration regulations when attempting to ship the equipment, and the U.S. government paid for the shipment to send the equipment back to the company, but that's already almost 2 years later. So, Qiang, from your understanding and observation, what could have been the new evidence that were found, or after 2 years of searches and, you know, looking far and near for evidence which emerged eventually to convince the U.S. authorities to return the shipment to Huawei? Or did they not have solid ground to do the seizure in the first place?
Well, I'm glad you asked a very interesting question. Here's the thing. So Actually, I think American government or the American president, they do have a legal base to seize all this equipment from Huawei. That out of the reason empowered by the Constitution, that is a national security reason. Because according to the Amendment of National Security, which empowered the president and its administration to forfeit all kinds of equipment or any objects which may endanger or threat the potential national security of the United States of America. So here comes the thing. So what kind of a product actually may threaten the United States national security? So basically, well, there's no law because in the United States, they follow the case law. So according to the previous cases, we find out, according to the Japanese cases or French cases and Japanese cases, basically you may find out that the product contains a chip or very highly classified materials or some other highly, rarely patented technologies maybe can be put into this category. So in this case, well, if I'm not wrong, I think this product seized by United States government is just Ethernet conductors or the routers, which is not a very high-end product in the internet businesses.
So, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but basically, here's the question. Then the United States government can go and search or seize the equipment from any company if they think there is a national security concern. So what gives companies any certainty that they can do business, that their business equipment or operations won't be interrupted because of national security concern? And by the way, after 2 years, there is no explanation, right? No apology. The U.S. government simply paid for the shipment of the equipment back to the company. How can companies operate with certain confidence and certainty that, they won't be disrupted like that? Qiang again.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you asked that. Actually, they don't. Well, this is the truth. According to the previous cases been encountered by Japanese companies and French companies, they do have a lot of concerns about the national security checks.
Do they do that to American companies as well?
Well, according to my knowledge, not by far. Well, this is actually a very interesting fact that has been the products actually come from an American company, which is an American branch company of Huawei. So basically, they've been enabled to just expand this investigation to whoever they want.
Yeah, Steve, what is your take on the same question? What is the problem, you think? Is there a problem that the U.S. government on national security ground can just go and seize equipment, and wouldn't that become some kind of hindrance for international businesses to operate in the United States?
Well, I would first argue, given what is at least available knowledge about the size of this shipment, that it's hard to believe that Huawei is in such a precarious position that this shipment would cause their business harm. Secondly, I think the fact that they were testing equipment and it was being tested in the United States, I think raises some questions as to whether or not it was even ready to go into production. Lastly, I would just say that let's sit down and really discuss this for a moment and determine whether or not the bureaucratic procedures were being followed here and whether something fell through the cracks that inadvertently ended up causing this delay. And I think while I'm willing to give the Commerce Department and their folks at BIS and EAR the benefit of the doubt on this one, I would just encourage staying away from overreacting and over-celebrating, if you will, here. The fact that this issue has been resolved.
But how common is it for the U.S. government to seize equipment from?
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time?
It happens all the time.
Okay. And
it happens all the time.
Do they do that regularly with American companies or foreign companies that are operating in the United States?
Yes, they do, and that's what the folks at the Commerce Department are paid to do, and they do it fairly efficiently. But again, this is kind of an iceberg situation. What we know above the waterline is not as extensive, I would suspect, as what's below the waterline here and what is involved. And again, there are certain things that these folks look for in the paperwork that if it raises red flags, immediately, like going through airport security, if they find something that doesn't look right in your bag, they shift it to another line.
I understand that. However, you know, maybe people are overreacting a little bit, but on the other hand, Huawei has been at the center of, of this very big almost a campaign to kill the company, to borrow the words of some of the more, some of the people behind U.S. President Trump's strategy against Huawei. So it is inconceivable that it was just a pure coincidence that equipment from Huawei was seized.
Well, Lynn,
Steve,
I would,
really
I would again challenge you to look at the number of shipments that are going and to isolate one here. And the incidents around it really, I think, raises more questions about whether we're overreacting or whether there really was some sinister motives involved here.
All right. Qiang, your take?
My take is that actually, well, this set up a very dangerous example because this is an American company we're talking about, American Huawei, so which will threaten a lot of American companies. For example, like Microsoft, they did make an announcement because Microsoft also have a great benefit, not only exporting to China, but also acting like a software company. Because as a software company, they are, at least they want to see a hardware company to be hidden because they work with hardware companies. And also there are a lot of American high-tech companies, they would like to export to China, for example, like Qualcomm. You see, you can see their great banner of advertisement in the very center of Beijing City. They have a great exposure in China. So if Huawei, well, have an excuse to be, you know, seize a product or to be censored, and how about other high-tech American companies?
We have to leave it there. Many thanks to Qiang from the Renmin University of China and Steve Pruitt, managing partner at Watts Partners, joining us from Washington, D.C. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. Find me on Twitter and Facebook using the handle The Point with LA. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices. You've got The Point.